Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Robert McCaw. I'm CAIR's Government Affairs Director, and this is CAIR on the Air. Today's conversation is titled Fighting Discrimination and Police Brutality. We will be having a discussion with CAIR-Chicago trial attorney Philip Robertson on an incident of shocking police brutality against a 17-year-old Muslim and our Chicago chapter's response. But first, we'll be speaking with our CAIR-Washington civil rights attorney, Luis Segura, and to discuss an incident of discrimination targeting two Muslim men on an Alaska Airlines flight, and also our CAIR-Washington chapter response. So, Luis, it's very good to have you here. Thank you for joining the program.
Thank you for having me. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. So, let's just jump right into it. The background on the case: in February 2020, two Black Muslim immigrant men were subjected to anti-Muslim discrimination on an Alaskan Airlines flight. And this was all due to another passenger's bigotry, where they did not understand that their fellow passengers could be Muslim, could speak or write in Arabic, and that wasn't a problem, except instead of the airline staff appropriate responding, the airline kicked these men off the flight and then subjected them to unnecessary security measures. So I have a lot of questions for you. And you're the guy to definitely be asking all of this right now. Why did Alaska Airlines take the side of a bigoted passenger who complained about the men speaking Arabic?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. What we have here is, a passenger who did happen to snoop on another passenger's text message, and that's one of our clients. That passenger, to our knowledge, does not speak Arabic at all, but became alarmed by seeing that text messaging, then complained to the flight staff for Alaska Airlines, and that kind of set off a chain of events. We had Alaska Airlines managers who responded to the complaint. They actually approached these two men. But initially, before even that happened, they had, announced a delay on the flight. So the flight's sitting there. This is during the time when people are still talking, moving around, adjusting their seats, on their phones like anyone else. And during that delay, Muhammad used the bathroom, and Abu Bakr was the client who was texting. But anyway, they were both removed. An Arabic-speaking Alaska manager reviewed the phone and the text in question on Abu Bakr's phone. Our clients were completely cooperative, completely calm. That Arabic-speaking Alaska manager confirmed that it was an innocent conversation between friends about family, about photos, lighthearted things that anyone should have a right to speak about without going through this. And then, once they knew that, they proceeded to still deplane the passengers and show our clients surrounded by law enforcement. And it just appears that they decided to kind of pile on to that discrimination, even though they knew that there was nothing wrong with the text messages.
So speaking of piling on, has the airline, I understand something horrible happened locally at Alaska Airlines, but did the company itself make a public statement that was apologetic, or are they kind of backing up their own bad behavior?
Our clients have received no statement. There's no public statement that I'm aware of, other than, that the general statement from Alaska saying that they don't unlawfully discriminate. But with respect to this incident, we have not received any response regarding their investigation, if that even took place, into the incident, and their position regarding these events and this discrimination.
Okay. So, I'm asking for the viewers, does an airline have the right to remove a passenger if they haven't done anything wrong, but another passenger wants them off the flight?
So what an airline can do is they're able to follow up on a complaint, right? If a complaint is raised, the airline doesn't have any control over that. But what they do have control over is what they do once that complaint by another passenger is raised. And so in this case, what Alaska Airlines had was confirmation that it was in fact baseless, that there was no threat whatsoever, and they don't have a right to discriminate if there's no credible threat, if there's no credible danger. In this case, we had none of that. And they still decided to scapegoat our clients and kind of feed into the Islamophobia that we know is prevalent in air travel.
So a captain just can't say, "I don't like how they look. Get them off my flight." That they can't do that, right?
That's against the law. Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. So kind of just discussing the lawsuit a little bit. What type of lawsuit did you file? What type of result are you looking for?
Sure. So we filed a complaint in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Washington. And so, Alaska Airlines is based here in Washington, and both our clients are based here in Washington. And so the complaint has two legal claims, and one is under Section 1981, which is the Civil Rights Act, and the Washington Law Against Discrimination. And so those are the two main legal causes of action in this complaint. The Section 1981 claim involves, the right to enter into a contract and not be discriminated against based on your identity, based on your race, to be treated just like any other passenger, just like a white passenger would. In this case, our clients entered into a contract to be on that flight. It was flight 304. They were paying customers. They followed the rules. They did nothing wrong. And yet Alaska Airlines treated them differently, less than, by preventing them from going back on their flight once they confirmed that there was no threat. And then on top of that, prohibiting them from flying together on the subsequent flights that they set up for them hours later. Sorry, just one more thing.
No, please.
And the state law specifically deals with prohibits discrimination in places of public accommodation, and so that's the Washington state law. And in this case, it applies to areas of public accommodation, including air travel, which is what we have in this case, and that one covers prohibition against discrimination on race, national origin, religion, all these different protected categories that apply in this case.
I thank you for that. I remember reading, I think it was in your press release, one of the clients said that they wanted to see this lawsuit through, that it was important to them. What can you say about that?
Sure. I mean, to them, they're still affected to this day, very much so. They want to, and they've expressed this several times, the main thing for them is that they want this type of discrimination to stop. And so they're not just about themselves or this experience, they're about the community. And they're about making sure that the community does not go through this, that the airlines are held accountable for mistreating Muslims in this way over and over again. And so, they're standing up for their rights, and we commend them, and we're there with them.
It's really commendable. If another Muslim community member, or really anyone, faces this type of discrimination while flying, while traveling, what's your advice to them?
Sure. I mean, there's different things that can be done to put themselves in a better position. Obviously, you can't prevent it from happening. Discrimination, unfortunately, is going to keep coming up, specifically in the air travel space, specifically to the Muslim community. But there are things that you can be aware of, that you can do to kind of make it less of, a quote unquote he said, she said situation. And so one thing is, if you notice that the discrimination is happening, you're getting as much information as possible, as much evidence to not make it a he said, she said, and to corroborate that the discrimination happened. So you're going to ask for names, ID information for the for the employees who are involved. You're going to write it down if you can. You're going to ask for business cards if you can. You're going to ask to speak to a supervisor. You're going to ask for, you're going to politely ask if the acts that they're taking against them are based on, their appearance, their identity, their looks, their faith, their national origin, their race, these different things that could show that it's discriminatory and unlawful. Make note of the attire that you're wearing that day. When you're reporting this, are you wearing hijab? Are you wearing anything that identifies your faith? All these things are relevant. You're going to want to be aware of any witnesses. There's people around you. It's a flight. Some people are paying attention and some aren't. But if you notice that some people are there and present and can be witnesses, see if you can politely ask for their information and see if they're willing to, be a witness to this discrimination. You want to take down as much information as possible about the flight, about the people involved, ticket information, and contact CAIR. Contact your local CAIR chapter, and if there isn't one near you, contact CAIR National. We're there for you, and we're going to fight for you.
We're working on a watch list case right now where, it's not a lawsuit, it's administrative. We're reaching out to federal agencies. We're following up on a DHS trip application. And so sometimes these things make the courts. Sometimes we work through the administrative angle, but, CAIR has a wide range of resources on how we address these. But I just want to thank you for working with the Muslim community in Alaska, for working with these two clients. The more lawsuits that get launched on these issues, they're not self-interested. They're really preserving the rights of the community, and they're preserving the rights of all other Americans. With that, do you have any parting words?
No, absolutely. And that, just reiterating that, but I want to say that it's a pleasure to be able to represent Abu Bakr and Muhammad. It's a pleasure to be fighting on behalf of the Muslim community. And we are going to make sure that these airlines are held accountable. We're going to make sure that they think twice before doing this, that they treat passengers, no matter their faith, their religion, their language, with the respect that they deserve. And we're going to be there with them along the way.
Well, Luis, it's a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you for joining the program. And I'm sure we're going to have you back soon to hear about how this case proceeds.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. We're just going to transition to our next guest. If you can wait 1 second. And with that, we have Phil Robertson, who is the legal director for CAIR-Chicago. And he's with us here today. Phil, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Robert?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for joining us today. We're here to speak about a CAIR-Chicago case. On July 27th, a 17-year-old named Hadi Abutala was repeatedly punched by OLPD officers following his arrest after he fled from a traffic stop. He was hospitalized for a broken nose, bruising on his face, his right arm, his back, and internal bleeding near his brain and forehead. The pictures were really hard to see. He really went through a number of injuries, and he's still recovering from those injuries. So CAIR-Chicago has stepped in. They have filed a lawsuit against the officers and the police department involved. I read the case that was filed. It was really impressive in its documentation. So I have a lot of questions about the background of this incident. And I want to thank you, Phil, again for joining us.
And no problem. If you want to chat,
yeah. Would you like to say anything else we maybe missed about the case summary before we jump into the questions?
No, I think you nailed the high points. The summary that we have in the complaint is based on obviously the video evidence that we have and the testimonial evidence that we've obtained so far. But we do have FOIA requests into the police department so that we can obtain further records. So at some point, we may be amending those complaints to add in more factual details, but I think you've got the brunt of them.
Okay, thank you. So just jumping right into it, why did Oak Lawn Police continue to attack this Muslim teenager after he'd already been restrained?
Well, that's the good question that we're all wondering. We believe that it was racially motivated. We believe that there was an action taken by these officers in concert to basically put the hurt on and punish this individual for fleeing from them. If you look at the video, even their video, you can see that he's a passenger in the car. He was requested to exit the vehicle by the police officer. He complied, and then he took off after realizing that maybe there was something going on here that really probably shouldn't have been going on, and probably felt for his own life that there may be some jeopardy. Took off. When they're hitting him, they're not doing anything in terms of trying to protect themselves from harm or trying to ascertain the presence of a gun. What they're doing essentially was just punishing him. Basically, they were hitting him while he was already subdued and on the ground. And the video makes that clear. You can see that the blows that were struck by the officers are when he's already in a prone position, basically huddled down on the ground, face down on his belly, and not able to reach any sort of gun or anything else in his backpack that is on his back. And the videos show that these officers, despite these conditions, are still continuing to pummel him and punch him in the face and about the head and neck and upper body. And the question we asked, even and was asked by many reporters at the press conference, is why? Why was this necessary? And the answer came back to us, according to the Oakland Police Department, that this was necessary because they felt that there was lethal force justified in that situation. And all of us looking at that video can say there is no lethal force that is justified in that situation.
Now, the individual had a bag. There were contents in that bag. The police are citing the contents of that bag as justification for what they were doing, but they had no legal reason to search himself or his property. How can the police justify their actions upon what they are later trying to say they found?
Right, and that's another issue. There was a question posed at the press conference to the chief, and it was, well, how did the officers know that he had a gun? And the chief responds by saying, well, they could tell by the way he was running. And all of us looked at that and said, no, that's just not actually believable at all. So it's our position, and it's Hattie's position, that this wasn't any knowledge of a gun that precipitated the pursuit and then the subduing on the ground and then the pummeling. This had nothing to do with that at all. This was simply just racial bias being taken out on a 17-year-old boy who they thought maybe was a threat for something. But at the time when they were pummeling him, they had no idea of what that threat might be. It could have been a gun. He could have run because he had drugs or something else. There are many reasons why he could have fled, one of which being a very reasonable apprehension that his life or safety was in danger, which gave him reason to believe that maybe this was not the safest situation for him. But as far as the gun issue goes, there is really no basis for them to make that argument because the gun wasn't recovered until after he was already subdued and after they already pummeled him and punished him. So as far as the argument that they were trying to protect themselves from the gun or search for the gun, none of that is borne out by the videos at all or the facts of this case at all.
And just looking how the police, they comported themselves, Oakland police are saying that their officers acted according to standard training. It appears that one of the abusing officers was a trainer himself. Is this true? Did they really act according to training?
Well, we're hoping that their training was much better than what is shown by this video. But one of the reasons we've included a Monell count in our complaint is that we believe that it probably wasn't. And unfortunately, if one of the officers who was engaged in this was the person responsible for doing the training at that police department, then we have some real serious concerns about the training that's going on at the Oakland Police Department. And we, if this is consistent with training there, then their training needs to be revised because this is not per protocol, per handbook at any other police department. This is not standard operating procedure. And so when the chief gets up there and says, well, this is consistent with our training, then their training needs to be revised if that's true. We're hoping that it's not. We're hoping that they actually have a more robust and diverse and culturally sensitive type of training. But from what we can tell from the video, that is not the case. And if this is consistent with those policies, then the village and the chief and the entire department has a lot to answer for.
Now, your complaint cites that the Oakland police were operating under the color of law. Can you please explain to our viewers what that is? And, based on that accusation, have the Oakland police agreed to launch an internal investigation? Or do you even think that investigation could be trusted?
Well, it's a couple different questions. The color of law issue basically means that they were officers duly authorized and sworn to protect and uphold the law and protect and serve the public in that capacity. So they were acting under color of state law, meaning basically that they had the authority to act to enforce the laws of the state.
But were they?
Well, in our opinion, no. What they did was well beyond what they are authorized to do as officers of the law. So going back to your question, the under color of state law basically means that when they were doing it, they were in their official capacity of doing so, as opposed to being in a personal capacity.
Mm-hmm. So because of that.
Yeah, and so because of that, now we're able to proceed under certain statutes like Section 1983 and other statutes that protect people from this very type of excessive force. You had some follow-up questions on that?
Yeah, just because the police clearly state that they were doing their duty, but we know that they were being excessive in force. Has the police agreed to launch an internal investigation? Sorry, I probably could have phrased that whole question better, but
yeah, they have agreed to do that. I believe that was part of their public statement that they were going to engage in that. But typically, when that happens, usually the officers are put on desk duty. Basically, what's called administrative leave, where they're assigned to a desk job and taken off of the street. I don't think that has happened here. So, that already fact number one makes me concerned that maybe they're not taking this very seriously. Fact number two is we don't know who's doing the investigation, who's going to run it, how it's going to be run, what the circumstances are, what the protocol is. We don't know anything about, how thorough it's going to be, who they're going to talk to, etc. So to answer your second question, then I'm not sure I would trust an internal investigation. And I do think that perhaps there might be some benefit in assigning it to an independent third party to conduct that investigation. I think that would probably be beneficial for us, but also possibly to them, because if the videos are any evidence of how they do things in-house, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And I'm not certain I would put very much faith in the results of that investigation internally.
Now, speaking of videos, have the police released the full video or an edited version of the video?
What we saw at the press conference was an edited version, and they acknowledged that, they did cut out parts of that. We believe that there were reasons why they cut out parts of that, and that was, the parts that show the exonerative conduct by our client, things that basically show that he didn't do anything wrong and did not deserve this type of punishment. Then we believe that those parts will be coming out during discovery, and we'll end up actually seeing those perhaps even sooner if we get them as a result of the FOIA request, which we should. So, at some point, like I said, we may be amending the facts of the complaint based on whatever those further videos show. But the video that we have from a bystander clearly shows that the individual, our client, was already down on the ground and subdued at the time they started just beating him mercilessly. And so I think the parts of the video that are missing from the Oak Lawn Police Department are parts where, such as the audio, where you can hear Hadi screaming out for help and asking them to stop and pleading with them. We believe all of that is actually out there, either in their video cameras or in other bystander video cameras. And we'll be obtaining that and releasing that to the public as it becomes available to us.
Well, what do you hope to achieve in this case?
Well, what we hope to achieve in every case, which is justice for our clients. In this case, we have a 17-year-old boy who is basically just a passenger in a car. He was just sitting there. They pulled the car over. They asked the driver to step out, which they would be able to do depending on the circumstances. But we believe that the whole thing unraveled quite unlawfully. I mean, from start to finish. We're not even sure they had a proper basis to pull the car over to begin with, to question this driver, let alone question a passenger who's sitting in there with no evidence of wrongdoing, just sitting in the car as a passenger. They had no basis for requesting him to get out of the car, and therefore, if there's no basis for them to make the request, there's no way for him to comply. The whole series of events would never have unraveled. But because of their police work or the lack thereof, this situation got out of hand much faster than it needed to. And our client was simply a person who was put in a bad position that was made much worse by the actions of these officers. And hopefully, at the end of the day, Hattie will also get justice, but there will be some improvements in Oak Lawn as well. A more responsive police department, perhaps a more diverse police department, one that is culturally sensitive to these types of issues, one where persons of color are not treated as second-class citizens or have their rights violated. So we hope to not only make benefits for Hattie to make him whole again, but we also hope to see some justice done there in Oak Lawn as well, to fix a system that appears to be seriously broken.
Thank you so much. Just one final question before I let you go. What's your advice to Muslims or really anyone that's experienced police brutality, excessive force, other acts of discrimination?
Well, obviously, I think call CAIR, but there are other things too. I mean, if they've already experienced the brutality and the harassment or any other type of misconduct like that, such as excessive force, they should be, reaching out to lawyers, reaching out to CAIR, reaching out to the media, and letting them know that these situations are occurring. If it hasn't occurred yet and they're concerned about it, then one of the things that I encourage them to do would be to attend perhaps one of our Know Your Rights sessions, or look online on our website to learn about some of the things that they can do as private citizens to protect their own rights. What are your rights when a police officer says, get out of the car? It doesn't matter if you're the driver, it doesn't matter if you're a passenger, it doesn't matter what's in the car or what the officers see. So learning about your rights is going to help you enforce them and guard and protect them against situations like this. So I strongly encourage people to do that, to start learning about what their rights are, particularly in these types of situations. And CAIR-Chicago and all of the other CAIR chapters as well can be helpful and instrumental in giving them that guidance.
Thank you. And I know on the CAIR-Chicago website and our national website and our chapter websites too, we have Know Your Right guides in a multitude of languages for the workplace, for school, at protests, and especially engaging with law enforcement. Phil, do you have any parting words?
Well, I hope that one of the things that comes out of this is a greater awareness that this is actually still occurring. Here we are in 2022, and unfortunately, even though we're coming on to 60 years of the Civil Rights Act being on the books, we're still seeing instances like this in the public, in the media, on the streets, in the workplace. And so I encourage people to be vigilant and aware. And I encourage people to start having the discussion about why these situations continue to occur and how do we address them. As a society, we are responsible for maintaining control. But when the people who are responsible to maintain control are out of control, then we need to step up and take action to make sure that our law enforcement is responsive to our needs and to all people, including people of color and communities of color.
Well, Phil, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for all the great work you do at CAIR-Chicago, and I want to thank CAIR-Chicago for looking out for the Muslim community out there. With that, everyone, this has been another episode of CAIR on the Air. We are on the air every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 12 noon Pacific time and all those other times between. I want to thank you for watching this episode. If you have any questions about, getting CAIR's Know Your Right resources or getting in touch with one of CAIR's legal offices, please email CAIR. Leave your comments in the chat. We love reading them. Please share this video. Thank you, and assalamu alaikum.